What is going on, Michigan fans? It's Clayton Sayfie with the Wolverine.com, back from State College, Pennsylvania, where Michigan beat Penn State 24-15 on Saturday, and ready to give you 5 takeaways from the Wolverines' victory. Before we get into it, make sure to hit the like button on this video if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up if you are excited about Michigan's win, and if you want the Wolverines to complete a second straight undefeated regular season. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and head to thewolverine.com for all of the latest Michigan football, basketball, and recruiting news. I was on the sideline for the game on Saturday, so a little bit of a different perspective. And if there was any game to be up close and personal with this Michigan team, it was this one. What a wild 24 hours, which is takeaway number one. From the time that Michigan really took off for State College, received the news, some people with knowledge of it while they're in midair due to a leak from the Big Ten to Pete Thamel of ESPN. They didn't have the courtesy to let Michigan know that Jim Harbaugh was going to be suspended for the final 3 regular season games. He finds out, and the team finds out as a whole officially once they land in State College. They're not going to have their head coach. Well, they have an injunction or motion for an injunction ready to go in the courts. Everybody's waiting on that all of Friday night, all of Saturday morning until around 10:30 a.m. when it's decided by the judge in Washtenaw County, Timothy Connors, that Harbaugh's injunction and a decision on that motion was not going to come before kickoff. There's going to be a hearing Friday. Big Ten will be able to state their case as well. Unbelievable 24 hours. You find out Sharon Moore is going to coach this team during the game. Michigan pulls off a top 10 victory over the Nittany Lions in hostile territory. Just so much happened, and so much has happened over the last few weeks for this Michigan team. The fact that they went and did what they did, which we'll talk more about specifics here in just a second, but absolutely incredible that they were able to get that done. Takeaway number 2 is the return of the Smash Fest. It's back. We questioned throughout the year Michigan's ability to run the football, and for good reason. I mean, they struggled at different points. They admitted as much, and they talked about throughout the year how they need to get better. They need to get the run game going a little bit more or quite a bit more at times. Well, they were able to do that in this game, and they relied almost exclusively on the run game. 32 straight runs to close out the game. The last official pass attempt came with over 7 minutes to go in the second quarter. No pass attempts in the second half. They did have a throw that was downfield. A.J. Barner draws a pass interference. They also were trying to throw a little screen pass to Samaj Morgan at one point, but Michigan had to take a timeout right before the play because the play clock was running down. So it's not like they weren't going to throw it. It's not like they were averse to throwing it, but the run game was working enough for them to keep coming back to it. And Penn State, frankly, was getting so much pressure early on in the game where Michigan didn't want to have to go that route. J.J. McCarthy was running for his life on a few of his dropbacks early on. He goes 7 for 8 completions in this game. He only threw 8 times. That's the fewest amount of passes Michigan has thrown in a game this century, which is absolutely absurd. The fact that you do that and win on the road against a great defense where you basically were one-dimensional by choice. And, you know, part of that you got to give credit to Penn State for the way they were playing and the way they were protecting. But you got to give a lot of credit to the Michigan offensive line, which took this kind of personally. They wanted to come into this game and make a statement on the road, and we've seen them do that over the last few years, but we've also seen them play better consistently throughout the year. Well, they rise to the occasion in this game from a run blocking standpoint. And again, it wasn't overly successful on a down-to-down basis. You look at Michigan's numbers, they rushed for 227 yards on 46 carries. That's an average of 4.9, which is pretty darn good, especially against the number 1 ranked rushing defense in the country. But there were a lot of 1-yard gains, 2-yard gains, 3-yard gains in there. Michigan able to pop a few big ones, and those were kind of the difference in this game. Donovan Edwards plays perhaps his best game of the season. He had a 22-yard run that set up a Blake Corum touchdown run. Then Blake Corum had a 44-yard run that set up a Donovan Edwards touchdown run. Then you have late in the game, Blake Corum pops his 30-yarder to basically seal the deal. All the players doing the Manny Diaz sign celebration after he was mocking them in a social media video earlier on in the week. This run game, these running backs, this team as a whole took everything personally this week and wanted to make a statement on Saturday in front of a national audience, and they did exactly that. Obviously, some concerns about the pass protection going forward. Carson Barnhart has taken a step back, it seems, this year in that department. He's playing right tackle now. That's the position he played a year ago. Early on in the year, it was kind of like, okay, he's playing on the left side. Maybe he's not as comfortable there. But right now, playing on the right side, which is where he's taken the most snaps in his career, and not getting the job done. But obviously, Penn State has some elite defensive ends, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, and really 5 edge rushers that have double-digit pressures this season. So they're able to rotate those guys in when they need to. And Chop Robinson obviously missed some time the last few games leading into this one before returning against Michigan. But the run game gets it done. Blake Corum, an absolute warrior. Go look at the photo on social media of him bleeding, on his face, near his nose. Sharon Moore said he needs stitches after this game. And Blake Corum, nothing was going to slow him down from getting the job done on Saturday. Takeaway number 3, an elite defensive performance from the Michigan defense. Penn State's defense is very good as well. I think coming into the game, it was kind of a crapshoot on who is better. Now, Michigan has a better offense, clearly, than Penn State, but the Michigan defense played incredibly well on the road against this Penn State offense. And you look at any number you want to, maybe outside of the run game stuff. I mean, Penn State was able to have some success, but I thought Michigan did a pretty good job of kind of shutting it down on second, third down at times, really making it tough for Penn State to stay on the field, even if they'd have a nice first down run. But Drew Aller, the quarterback, goes 10 for 22 for 70 yards and 1 touchdown. That passing touchdown comes later on in the game when, to make it 24-15. And then he does rush for 1 touchdown. Katron Allen had 12 carries for 72 yards. Nick Singleton, 13 carries for 43 yards, so not as successful. But Michigan comes up with the huge momentum-changing play in the third quarter. Penn State's first drive of the half. After having momentum at the end of the first half, getting a touchdown, pulling within 14-9, and having the ball knowing they could take the lead on that first drive. Rayshon Benny forces a fumble. Makari Page falls on it. Then Michigan goes on an 8-minute scoring drive ended in just a field goal. But that was huge because next thing you know, you look up at the scoreboard, and there were only 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. Suddenly, it was late in the game. Michigan had control. Michigan had a big enough lead with 8 points there where you felt fairly comfortable given the way the defense was playing and the way Penn State's offense wasn't consistently moving the football, where it's like, okay, you have this 8-point lead. At the very least, this game's going to be tied, and they're going to really have to earn it with going down, scoring a touchdown, and then getting the 2-point conversion to even tie it. Not even a chance of taking the lead on you. And again, it comes down to a questionable call from James Franklin in the first half to go for 2, which he was questioned about in his post-game press conference. Sunday, we get the news that Penn State fires its offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcich. Jesse Minter, that defense probably had a lot to do with it. Obviously, things weren't going the way Penn State wanted them to on offense throughout the year. We saw that in the Ohio State game as well. They just haven't been as good as you thought they would. Everyone figured coming into the season that if Drew Aller took that big step forward and cemented himself as one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten, there was enough talent around him for this Penn State team to make the leap from 10, 11 wins, Rose Bowl champs last year, to potentially a Big Ten champion, making it to Indianapolis, but has not been the case. They will likely finish 10-2 this season with a couple games to go. Michigan, on the other hand, moving on. Defense looks good and shows up in the big game. Takeaway number 4. Sharon Moore, extremely emotional after the game. Everybody saw at this point his post-game interview with Jenny Taft from Fox. If you haven't yet, go watch it. If you've watched it 5-10 times, go watch it 5-10 more times because it was fantastic. Had a couple expletives fly, but he was in tears. And it was an emotional release, he said, after the game. And you can just tell, not only for Sharon Moore, but the rest of this team, like what a special day this was. And they're embracing the Michigan versus everybody mantra. Well, everybody was rooting for them to fail, probably including Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, who suspended Jim Harbaugh coming in. They don't get their court injunction. They don't have their head coach, but they were able to fight and do what they did on Saturday. And you could tell after the game. I mean, I'd never seen J.J. McCarthy as fired up, sprinting off the field, pumping up the crowd. Mike Barrett is going around high-fiving every single Michigan fan in the front row as he exits the field. Just the way these guys after the game handle themselves, talked about the game in their post-game press conferences. You could just tell this was an emotional one. This quote from Trevor Keegan, I absolutely love. And Trevor Keegan is one of the best interviews on the entire team. He has been for the last couple of years, but he's really starting to become kind of a spokesman for the players. And what he says is kind of the team language, as Jim Harbaugh would call it. But he says, quote, "The storm is coming. Nah, we are the storm. That's our mindset." And that's kind of, that embodies exactly what you saw out of Michigan in this game and really throughout the last few weeks and throughout the season is, yeah, there's a storm coming. There's all these allegations. They got all these distractions. No, they're the storm. They're still focused on their mission. They're still marching towards a third straight Big Ten championship, and they don't feel like anything is going to get in their way at this point. 2 games left with Maryland and Ohio State, but it is absolutely incredible what this team did on Saturday. And takeaway number 5, kind of going along with it, you have the 1,000th win for this Michigan football program on the clock in a unique circumstance, because on Friday, when the team will be traveling to Maryland, Jim Harbaugh, not sure if he has to appear in court or not, but at least some representation from him and the university will, against the Big Ten. They're going to try to figure out and try to get him to be able to coach in these last couple regular season games. You also have the 1,000th win that is pending. Michigan, a 20-point favorite early on over Maryland on Saturday in College Park. And you get to 11-0, and you're setting up potentially an 11-0 against 11-0 matchup between Michigan and Ohio State for the second straight season. Michigan trying to go undefeated in the regular season for the second straight year overall, with that Jim Harbaugh hearing a lot riding on it. It's not just his status for the Maryland game, but it's also his status for the Ohio State game, because if that doesn't go through, I know they could appeal. Not sure how quickly that would go through if they do win an appeal, but in all likelihood, it comes down to Friday on whether or not Jim Harbaugh is going to be able to coach against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And it's one thing to win at Penn State, and that was really tough for them to do. I think for Ohio State, just given how tough that game always is, having your head coach is going to make things a lot easier for you. So I think everybody in Ann Arbor is hoping that Jim Harbaugh gets that. But you could see the support from the players, the way they talked, the way they played, the coaches, all hands on deck in this game, with Sharon Moore leading the way. Mike Hart was in charge of timeouts on offense. They had to use a couple to save themselves from getting a delay of game. Jesse Minter, kind of the head coach of the defense, and all the other coaches rallying around each other. This team's connected. They go to the hockey game on Saturday when they get back from State College, and they got a huge ovation, and some Jim Harbaugh chants broke out as well. If you haven't seen those videos, go watch them. If you've seen them, probably go watch them again, because they're fantastic. So an incredible weekend in State College. Thank you so much to everybody for watching, for listening, and for following along at thewolverine.com. Excited for this weekend at Maryland. We'll have all the coverage for you on the YouTube channel here, as well as the website.